by 2004, the number will be around like around 160 million.
Yeah. Okay. So, question is, what value would you place on RightNow technology? So, according to the case study on page 8, it says that the purchaser or the acquirer would be willing to pay on the running rate, which is the upcoming year for 2004,
50.
which they expect to be 50 to 60 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if based on the other technology companies that were purchased, I think like around two times revenue.
Yeah.
Which would put them about $100 million. So obviously, if you reduce it to 1.5 or 1.7 or 2.5 or something like that, then you're going to be valued at 125 million, 130 million, or all the way down to 80 million.
So are you looking at Exhibit 4? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah. So Exhibit 4 shows the buyer and the seller. So companies that were acquired. So for example.
So the adjusted price is that how much they sold it for?
Yeah. So take for example, so Eastman Kodak bought Practice Works Incorporated.
Yeah.
Their revenue was 111 million, and Kodak paid 420 million for it.
Okay. So the revenue right now for Nowtech is 35. So if we compare it to the second one, that's 34. They got 82 million.
Right. So 2.37. But according to the case, it says that they were willing to possibly pay on what 2004 numbers would be, not what last year's number would be.
So that puts them at 60. So that means that they are
about 120. Yeah, 120 million.
159. Because if you compare it to the seller's revenue of 57, is more than 159.
Right.
There's like 2.79 times the revenue. So are they undervalued, under putting them undervalue, like those people that are trying to sell to buy it? Because he says that they're willing to buy it by 50 or 35. Is that what I'm understanding?
So there's trailing. There's the trailing value or the running value. So trailing value is what took place, and running value is what they're on track to do.
Okay.
So according to that, according to the case, it seems that the company looking to acquire right now is willing to pay on the running value, not the trailing value.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it was,
I see what you're saying now.
3 times, yeah. I mean, looking at those numbers, there's anywhere from 150. I mean, it could be 150 million to up to 300 million.
Yeah.
So, in the case study, it mentioned that he was about to make a lot of people millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of maybe a clue. So, so our conclusion is based on the charts in the case that mentions the previous sales and the current information we have. The next question is about the investors. On question number 3, the investors seek a 30 to 50% internal rate of return. What exit value will they expect? So there was an A round and a B round.
Yeah.
And there was 2 chunks of money that were invested at that time.
It was 16. They were both 16, right?
About 16 million, yeah. So it said in 1999, RightNow closed a $16.4 million round led by Greylock. Summit Partners also participated. The post-money valuation was $100 million. Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of. So that means that they get. Wait, so would they get 50 or whatever is?
Yeah. Well, so if the post money valuation was 100 million,
Mm-hmm.
and Greylock put in 16.4, so what does that mean the company was worth prior?
Sorry, I'm brain.
Charles?
Yes, I was looking at their screenshot of their product. That's what I was involved in. Sorry.
Was it 84? Right? 100 minus 16-ish. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Whoa. It's 84-ish.
All right, and so then on page 6, it says that a Series B, there was a post-money valuation of 129 million. That was a year later.
So that's 113.
So the investors have put in basically 32.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
Which leaves it, so that's about 25%. So they basically bought 25% of the company. So I did the math. I took 129. I subtracted. Well, actually, if they did, well, yeah. So so the investors originally had 16.4% of the company. We have to use a spreadsheet to figure out what they originally want. Anyways, what's the value? What's the exit that they're expecting? If they've put in 32 million and they want an internal rate of return
50
at 30%.
Are we using those numbers that we just kind of guessed? Like the valuation?
So you have to use calculation. So internal rate of return at 30%. Does that imply that every year they make 30% on their money?
I think so. They should.
So what's the exit that they would need if they wanted to make a 30 to 50% rate of return? So it involves what, net present value?
I think so. Rate.
Math.
24. That doesn't sound right. It says 24. It doesn't sound right. Unless I'm doing it wrong. MPV. Returns the net present value of the investment based on the discount rate. That's not what I want for. Future value, maybe? $7.45. What? Wouldn't it be? So it's about nine added per year, right? If it's 30% of what they, right, of what they invested. Is that what I'm discussing?
So how many years has it been? It's been, if we use the 2000 numbers, so 16 million times.
Are we doing 16 or 32? I think on 32.
1.3 to the third
59.
equal $48 million.
How many
No,
years?
16 times 1.3 to the third
3 years.
equals 35.152, 35 million.
You know, just 30. So you know, you can, if you go to Excel and put equals and then put FB, it gives you the quicker option.
Oh, I was using a calculator.
Oh.
So
then, go ahead.
What'd you do, Zul?
So I did the future. So equals FB, and then it should ask you for the rate and then the number of years, and then you put 0 on payments, and then present value, which is 16.
Oh, cool. So you would put future value, so 30 would be the percentage, and then for the first one would be like 16.4 million. there's no payment.
So the NPER is the number of years. The PV is the present value, which is the 16.
All right, 16. So for the first round, it's 4 years. Well, they invested at the end of, when did they invest? The end of 1999? Is it 3 or 4 years? Is it the beginning of 1999 or the end of 1999? 3.
I think it's 5 years. 1999. The following 5 years at the. Wait. Do you remember, Charles?
What?
When did they first invested?
When they first invested?
Yes.
I do not.
Okay.
What? I think it's 1999.
I thought I said at the end. So hold on a second. I want to say they invested at the end because at the end of the year they had sales to show. Yeah, so in December. So basically, so they had all of 2000, 2001, 2002, and at the end of 2003, that's when they're looking to get purchased. So they had 2001, 2002, 2003. It was just 3 years. So one had 2 years and one had 3 years. So one had 16.4, one of the other one had 16. Okay. Oops. All right, so the first investor is looking at getting 36 million to 55 million back.
Mm-hmm.
And the second round investment is looking to get 27 to 36 million back. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So the company's looking to pay back the investment to 63 million or $91 million. Which I guess that makes sense. So if they received a combined total of 36 million investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they get bought out, they have to turn around and hand that money back to the sum of $63 million. Which means the investors kind of double their money. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Can you see my Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
So this is 30%. This is 50%. And this is Series A, Series B. So it's interesting, like if so that means every year they have investors. The investors are expecting about $10 million a year.
Wow. Yeah, this is like, yeah.
Okay, so percentage-wise, the first, I would say altogether, the two based on the post money valuations
Mm-hmm.
at 129 million. So if it's 129 million, come on, is it working? So that's 129 million, and the total investors put in 36.2, right? 36.4. Oh, 32.4. So correct me if I'm wrong. But doesn't that mean that's the percentage of ownership, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, so if they're expecting this payout, that's basically 25%. They own 25% of the buyout.
Mm-hmm.
So these are my numbers. So at 30% internal rate of return, if they're talking about just equity, they would have to sell for about $250 million, right? Because if they were to cash out all of their portion of that stock, that's how much it would be worth, right?
Yeah.
If I do the math, I check my work here, $250 million times 0.25, that's 62.5. Yeah. So that's the exit. That's the value of the exit at 30%.
That's a lot.
And that's it.
So they need to be at around.
Yeah. So that tells you what you should have for a buyout for times earnings. Right. So if revenue, that's crazy.
At around 250 revenue to get at least 350. That's great.
Yeah. So if the revenue is 50 million, and they'd have to sell for 250 million, and that's a 5 times revenue number, which would be higher than all of the other examples on the case, right?
Crazy. So wouldn't be able to close then. Because they wouldn't be able to pay all their investors, right?
Yeah, so I don't. I mean, let me. So yeah, I mean, I guess they'd have to agree, but going back to the question here, the question is, what the exit value they expect. So moving on to the other question, part of the homework, and the group here says, provide your analysis of each of the options Greg is considering. So let's start that. And we're kind of doing the analysis. So we might as well go on with the question. Based on our analysis, we need to think of what should Greg do. Based on, and also we should consider Greg's goals as well as the goals of everyone else who is involved in this venture. So now you started to say that
investors wouldn't like to sell because they won't be getting their full, return.
right. Yeah, trying to get a 30% rate of return. But I mean, to me, that's surprising. If the other company is willing to fork out $250 million, then I guess that would be I guess that's a good consideration. Because what would an IPO be? That's one thing we should consider. What would an IPO be?
Does it have?
I just can't imagine IPO being more than $250 million.
Well, they were comparing it with like Forbes or something, and they weren't even close.
Say that again.
Weren't they comparing themselves with like
Salesforce?
Yeah, and it wasn't like they weren't even close to what they.
Okay, did it say what Salesforce went for IPO?
I never saw it.
Huh?
They were talking of. I thought they talked about it, but maybe I confused. I know they were talking about how they went on.
I know that they had a failed IPO attempt.
That was right now.
Oh, I see. Salesforce is filing for an IPO in 9 months.
Does it say how much?
No, because you have to wait.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they have to wait.
Well, and then again, RightNow technologies, they were trying before, like Charles said, but they couldn't.
There's a baby right there. Okay. You go poo-poos?
Wow.
Prepared.
So I was looking at online a Salesforce IPO.
Oh, that's mommy's. Here, you can have some water.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna get more water.
so it says Salesforce went public 2004.
More water.
This is cheating. But their valuation at IPO was $1.1 billion. The IPO was $11 a share. So I guess what happens is when you have an IPO, it doesn't mean you sell all of your company. You might only sell like 10% of your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you sell 10% of your company for $100 million, what's the other 90% worth? $900 million, right?
I guess.
But you would have to you'd have to put those shares out on the market and sell them to get the money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So guess what their current stock is now? Their current stock is $124. So if you bought their and then their stock tanked for some reason in 2004. So they went out on IPO at 11, and then in 2005 their stock was like $3 or $4 or $5. But it looks like they started making money because they're worth 100 and their stock is $124 a share now. In 2017 they had a revenue of $8.3 billion.
You know, I would have thought they would have just stayed. Because what I recommended was just to not sell and to not do the IPO.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would wait to see what happens with Salesforce.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, like what's gonna happen?
Think about it. Based on hindsight, right? Based on our hindsight. But all things are pointing to what they're trying to do online as the future.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say if I had my own company and someone offered me $250 million for it, and I owned 50%, and so I was left with $100 million. I'd probably be like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
See you later. And I'd just go maybe start some other company. But one of the things I was thinking was he was talking about how he wants employees, he wanted to employ people. He wanted to see the company grow, and he needed resources, but which kind of made me think, if he wants to see a bunch of people in this town in Montana, have jobs, that I would think that either he would broker some deal so that the buyout would allow him to, I don't know, maintain some kind of control, or I don't know, something, or he would just tell him to hold off because he wants to, I don't know, meet these other goals. Any thoughts from you, Charles?
No.
Based on provide your analysis of each of the options. Did we miss an option? One option was an IPO. One option is the acquisition.
So the one was the IPO. One was to accept the acquisition and grow within a larger organization, reject the acquisition and plan for an IPO in 2004, reject the acquisition offer and continue to grow organically. So we had three options.
So what were your thoughts?
My thoughts?
Yeah.
My thoughts is that I love it most.
Cut off, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I liked option one the most. The reason for that was, according to all the financials, they were bleeding money. They were not making money, and at least if they were bought by a large and company could absorb some of those additional costs. Because I did not like the fact on the financial in 2003 net income of -$4,000 about 4120.
Alright, what is this sound? I can't hear anything.
Can you, is it my kid playing in the background?
I don't know. It's like a dun 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 dun. I don't know what that
Turn
is.
it
This is kids playing in the background.
You can hear his game playing in the background.
Yeah. Okay, what I was saying was, I did not like the net in negative $4 million on the financial data back in.
Wait, did you said you like the first option, right?
Correct. I like the first option, which was to accept the acquisition and grow within the organization. And the reason for that is because the larger organization can absorb some of the costs that you as an individual company would have a very hard time absorbing.
Right. Well, at least they're getting positive cash flow now. So, if the 2004 turned out like it was going to, then they wouldn't. Then hopefully 2004 would mean that they didn't lose money that year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way that 2002 they lost 27.49. In 2003 they lost 41.20. I would expect in 2004 they would lose $6,000 some million.
Okay.
Because you went from, in 99 they only had a net loss of $45 million, and then from there it went to a 5-digit $19,647 million. So the company has not proved to me that it can actually make money on its own. So if a larger company is willing to come out and scoop up the smaller company, hey, I am all for it.
Take the money now.
Hey, you know what? My the way I look at it is, when you're in business or trying to start a business off the ground, do not look a gift horse in the mouth. If they're offering you something, take it, because it's the last time that you might have a good deal.
Sometimes it's not good to accept the option.
That is true. Sometimes it's not good, but sometimes you just have to take a gamble.
All right, that's an analysis. All right, I think that concludes our session.
Yep.
I have to go on to another group meeting.
Very good.
Okey-dokes.
Yay! Thanks, guys. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Sewell.
Thanks.
All right.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.